Barack Obama and Mitt Romney are throwing everything they've got into a last-ditch effort to woo voters in undecided states in the closing days of the pre-election duel. Promises of change and economic recovery are taking center stage in what's ironically the most expensive presidential race in U.S. history. But talk about any cuts to the massive defense spending is absent from the front lines of the campaign, with both candidates expected to keep the mighty military machine rolling, as Marina Badnaya reports.
Our military spending has gone up every single year that I've been in office. We spend more on our military than the next 10 countries combined. China, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, you name it.
America has a responsibility and the privilege of helping defend freedom. We've got to strengthen our military long term. I will not cut our military budget.
In a post 9/11 America, the Pentagon's budget has grown more than 40%, averaging $500 billion per year. Critics say a new party or president in the White House won't change the policies firmly cemented in Washington.
The reality is that both of these men are very much continuations of the military-industrial complex's domination of our political system and our democracy. So when they keep talking about how they're going to supply jobs, increasingly that's where the jobs come from, both foreign interventions and also this giant so-called Homeland Security Department.
The price of defending the homeland, critics say, continues to come at a grave cost to civil liberties.
This war on terror, has led, what we discussed before, the NDAA. You have militarized police, cracking down on protesters. You have this massive empire abroad, and in order to sustain that, you need to have peacekeepers here at home to make sure that the war machine rages on.
Earlier this year, the former CIA director applauded President Obama for closely following the controversial policies of his predecessor.
And despite a campaign that was based upon a very powerful promise of transparency, President Obama, and again, in my view, quite correctly, has used the state secrets argument in a variety of courts as much as President Bush.
More than 6,500 U.S. soldiers have been killed fighting America's post-9/11 wars, and nearly 50,000 have been wounded in action. A reported 250,000 Americans who have fought in Iraq or Afghanistan have been diagnosed with mental health injuries from combat service. Even as America's wars wind down, the suicide rate among troops has surged to a 30-year high. According to the Pentagon, this year's total may reach as many as one suicide per day.
It's not just what happens in war, like the deaths and the injuries, but what happens afterwards. You have these basically veterans coming home, to broken communities and broken families with broken bodies and broken minds. And that's, in terms of, as a society, is that something that we want? Do we want, as a society, where we have important members of our communities, coming home with problems? And then that's the reality of war.
In the 2012 fiscal year, taxpayers funded a U.S. defense budget of $544 billion. It's estimated that sum could provide 2 million military veterans with free medical care for 35 years.
Talking about national defense has been almost sacrosanct, sort of like the Defense Department wants something. To question that is to question something that is unquestionable. And that has meant that the largest part of the U.S. government spending has been beyond analysis. Beyond public scrutiny.
In 4 days, Americans will elect a leader for the next 4 years, regardless of who wins. The legacy of war cemented under the past 2 U.S. presidents indicate that the world's largest defense budget will continue ballooning. This causing many to ask if hundreds of billions of dollars are being spent to increase security or erode stability. Reporting from New York, Marina Badnaya, RT.